As we move distinctly into autumn, seeds and seed heads are taking over from flowers as the most prominent display in our borders. And I don't think any one of them is more dramatic than those of cardoon. These seed heads will stay on for quite a lot longer. The wet is what gets them as much as cold, and the birds get in and take them out. So as well as looking fantastic, they're great for wildlife, and I've got no intention of cutting them back. However, the leaves, particularly when they're wet, do look rather bedraggled and take away from the sculptural quality of these enormous 8-foot-tall stems. So I'm just stripping these off. And it's worth doing this at this time of year. Yes, there are hopefully still flowers going, but they are diminishing. So seed heads and foliage are increasingly important. And this sort of detail, going around the garden at this time of year, tweaking it, just finessing, making sure that the details are looking as good as they can, just to make the most of the garden as it slowly winds down into winter. Now, coming up on today's programme, we join Frances in Devon, and this time in her own garden, to see how it's coming along.
It's been a real learning curve, partly about the space, but also about myself. I've always grown veg, and this garden has become a flower garden. Who knew?
We meet a couple who are keen to celebrate the weird and wonderful world of carnivorous plants.
Sarracenias produce nectar along the rim here. Insects come to feed on it. It gets a bit woozy, and in the end it just falls in. It's not that gruesome, but it does sometimes take a while for the fly to pass.
Nick discovers how CT scanners are now being used to reveal the secret life of plants hidden deep beneath the soil.
Imagine you have a camera at the end of the root, and this is exactly what a root would see if it could.
It's extraordinary. I mean, it's like the soil particles almost look like glazed donuts with the way the water's kind of wrapping around them.
Exactly. And it's those soil particles which contain the nutrients which the plant obviously requires.
And we visit a gardener in Kent who has created a garden that brims with colour, as well as having some pretty strict design rules.
The north side of the garden is planted in green and white, and the other 3 sides of the garden are all colours. And the two do not mix and are not allowed to mix.
Should you have a mind to, this is the ideal moment to plant any shrubs into your borders. From the middle of October to the end of November is the sweet spot to plant anything woody. Quite recently, I would have said you could do it any time between November and the end of March, which is essentially the dormant season. But this is not so much about dormancy, it's about adapting to the changing weather patterns. So if you can get your woody plants in autumn, the roots will go on growing probably until Christmas, and yet with no demands from the top growth. But more importantly, they will get winter wet, and that sees them through dry periods in the summer. Having said that, the dry spring and hot, dry summer has resulted in stupendous berries. The berries this year are as good as I have ever seen them, and I want to add more to this border. This end of the long orchard borders deliberately tries to fade and merge out to the countryside beyond. Longmeadow is surrounded by fields, and I like to get looser and less formal and wilder as it edges out towards the boundaries. Right. What I have here is a berberis. This is Berberis georgii. So it's got green foliage and these wonderful, sort of slightly elongated, brilliant vermilion red berries. And, ow, it's spiky. So we're trying to avoid that. Perfect. Now, to get this in, I have to take it out the bag without scratching myself to death. This, by the way, came from the wildlife garden. Pretty good root system. Now that's a little deep. It is important to get the level right. If you plant, particularly any woody plant, too deep, they sit in a saucer. So then when it does get wet in winter, it can rot. It wants to be, if anything, slightly proud of the surface. So we take that out and top up the soil underneath it. Let's try that. Yeah, I think that's okay. Right, let's backfill. Berberis are tough plants. They will adapt to shade, they'll adapt to being dry, and they are a really good choice if, like here, you have the roots of trees sucking up a lot of moisture and you only get dappled sunlight for half the year. Now, I've had water to hand because it is really important that when you plant anything, but particularly a woody shrub or a tree, you give it a drink. Give it a really good drink now, and then it'll be fine all winter. This is a 3-gallon can, and I will put all of it in. And of course, having given it a really good water, the chances are it will pour with rain and flood, and there'll be no need, but there we go. It should adapt to its new home fine, particularly at this time of year. And then next summer, I'm pretty confident that it'll cope with whatever the weather throws at it. Now, for the first time for too long, we're going to revisit Frances in her garden in Devon.
It's hard to believe this is now the end of my 3rd year here in my first ever garden. And it has completely transformed since last you saw it. It's been a real learning curve, partly about the space, but also about myself. I've always grown veg, and this garden has become a flower garden. Who knew? And yet, with that, it is so full of pollinators, hoverflies, bees, wasps, and then all of the birds that come and interact with that too. So it's really become a proper wildlife garden. And I've really loved creating it. Let me show you around and you can see all the changes that have happened. When I first got here, it was basically a lawn with a couple of plants. There was a huge bay tree here, and the first thing that I did really was to get rid of that bay tree. It was excluding all of the light. I've put a plum tree there instead. This is a mirabelle plum, which is much more translucent. When it starts blossoming, that will look beautiful. Next, I put some paths in. So there's a big path here, and that's all made out of reclaimed bricks from family members and friends I've visited. And then the rest is basically plants. This side is quite shady, and this side is quite sunny. I've been moving plants around so that the plants are repeated. I have rudbeckias here, and I treat the whole thing like one big border because it's so small that you see everything, no matter where you are. When you have a new garden, you try all the plants that you love to see what works. And this has worked so well. This is just Champsia cespitosa, so it's a native grass. Beautiful ochre colour in the autumn. I love it. But there are lots of grasses here in this garden, and one that hasn't worked so well is the panicum. It's just too big, so I'll probably remove it and replace it with something a little bit neater and more well-behaved eventually, although it is very pretty. You may remember my greenhouse, which is my pride and joy. It was the first thing that went in the garden, and I love this greenhouse. It's a bit full, needs a bit of editing, but by the end of the summer, that's always expected. You know, I've got tomatoes all ripe, I've got cucumbers ripening, I've got tomatillos, I've got some really interesting arid herbs like preet and oregano and white sage. Actually, looking around in here now, it needs a little bit of water. This is an old water tank, and it's doubled up amazingly as a water butt. Whenever there's a big dump of rain, one night of rain is almost enough to fill this up. And so I've found that this year I've only had to water the garden one time with the hose pipe, despite it being one of the hottest and driest years ever. I've just noticed the tomatoes actually climbing out of the window there from the greenhouse. Believe it or not, behind this jungle of tomatoes, there is an almond tree, which has the most beautiful blossom in the early spring, very, very pale, pale pink. When they split, theoretically, they should be ready to harvest. Now, I've never grown these before. I've certainly never harvested them before. So I'm very intrigued to see if this is actually ripe. Well, let's see. Ooh! I didn't bring my nutcracker out here with me, but hopefully inside there will be something delicious. I really want to use my teeth on it, but I'm not going to do that. In the pocket for later. Come on then. This is one of the best sunny spots in the garden. One of the things that I've added is scabious. I have devil's bit scabious, which is a native plant that grows on Dartmoor. It's really beautiful. It's a late scabious, very neat flowers. Another plant that's done incredibly well here is the sanguisorba. This one is Tanner, and I've repeated it throughout the garden, and it just gives a bit of stature and height, and the tiny maroon flowers play beautifully against the lovely purple leaves of this elder. So it's a really, really beautiful plant. Come on then. Something I found a little bit of a design conundrum in this garden is my lawn. It's got smaller and smaller and smaller. I decided a while back to actually plant, instead of grass, different Mediterranean herbs that are ground covering. So I've got things like chamomile, there's some thyme as well. Anything that will spread through the ground and can take a little bit of trampling. But I haven't quite got around to actually doing this yet. I bought all of these plants and they've been sitting there all summer. So what I'm going to do is pop them up into something slightly bigger. So I have a mix of 50-50 peat-free compost with some horticultural grit. Although it does rain an awful lot here, the soil is incredibly free draining. So I have found that I can get away with a lot more drought-tolerant plants than I expected. So I'm hoping and thinking these will in fact be really, really happy here on the lawn. One of the pleasant surprises in this garden has been this plant. I've got two of them. It's Indigofera. This is its second year and it has flowered all spring and summer. It started in May. You can see some of these flowers are so long. So in a small space, you get so much flower and the bees love them. And it's just been a really lovely thing. It sort of sums up the experimentation of having your own garden. To plant new things, try new things in new ways, see what works, see what doesn't work, and then keep shifting it each year.
I think the point that Francis is making actually hits on the nub of all that's good about gardening. Because the fact that it evolves, it changes, it's partly through growth, it's through the seasons, and you wake up one morning and you think, oh, I'd like to move that, or I'm going to try this. That's what makes gardening such fun and so dynamic. These are quinces. It is the best year for quinces since we've been here at Longmeadow. I planted this tree, which is Vanja, about 28 years ago, I think. And this year, it is heavy with fruit. Absolutely fantastic. Now, quinces are a curious mixture of an apple and a pear in the way they look, but they stay hard, so you have to cook them to eat them. But it is worth the trouble, because quinces have a kind of fragrant, almost perfumed aroma and taste that is like nothing else. You could put one of these in your living room in a bowl and it would act as a pomander. It would just delicately scent the whole room for weeks. And one quince to about 20 apples will transform an apple pie, apple crumble, stewed apple. Absolutely fantastic. They store fairly easily. Like all fruits, you need somewhere cool and dark, but they will store for months. And quince trees are an untidy, straggly tree with the most glorious blossom in May. But you don't need to have much space to grow them. In fact, you don't even need a garden. They grow perfectly well in a pot. Now, as well as harvesting quinces, now is the perfect time to plant them. It's actually the perfect time to plant any fruit tree. This quince is called Serbian gold, and quinces, like apples and pears, are grown on a rootstock, which means that the top bit is different to this bit there, and there's the joint, so it's grafted onto it. This is the rootstock, which determines how it grows and how big it will grow. And then the top section determines the variety, which in this case is Serbian gold. Now you can see it's not exactly tiny, and it probably could grow twice as big if it was planted out into the soil. But in a pot, that will restrict the roots, and it won't get a lot bigger than this, but it could be covered in fruit, so ideal for a patio. Now, you need a pot that is about twice the size of the one that it's bought in. A pot this size, for example, would do perfectly well for the next 2, 3, or even 4 years. To give it the best start in life, I've got here a barrel load that I've mixed up of a peat-free, coir-based compost mixed with grit. I've also got some garden compost. And of course, garden compost is not so much a feed as a way of introducing bacteria and fungi into the compost mix that will interact with the roots. Mix it up. Put some in the bottom. That's probably enough, more than enough, I'd say. Now, I'll take it out its container. There we go. You can see that that's got a good root system. I might just tease the roots a little bit. What I'm doing is just damaging the roots deliberately in order that they grow back stronger and sideways. Right, we'll pop that in there. Yeah, it's almost perfect, actually. That's good. Fill in around it. When you're potting up like this, it's a good idea to use your fingers just to push down the soil around the plant. And always leave about 1 inch from the rim for watering. Otherwise, the water tends to bounce off. Obviously, once you've potted it up, give it a soak. That should be then okay for the rest of winter. But as soon as you see leaf growth, In spring, water it once a week and give it a soak once a week. Don't just sprinkle. Give it a really good drink. And from between May and September, I would give it a feed too, once a week, liquid seaweed. You don't need anything more potent than that, and that will encourage really good fruiting. Place this somewhere sunny and protect it from the worst of the wind. And it should be fine. Enjoy the blossom in spring. It's self-fertile, so it doesn't need another quince to fertilize it and pollinate it. So if you have blossom, there is every chance that you will have fruit, and those fruit will be absolutely delicious. Now, from growing plants that produce things we like to eat, we're going to visit a couple of growers who grow plants that like to eat things.
You only have to look at them to see that they're different to other plants. They're just very striking, architectural.
I'm not particularly fussed about the architecture. I love what they do. I love that they catch flies and wasps and how they do it, that they drug flies. It's just a wonderful world of carnivorous plants.
The Venus flytrap is the best known of all the carnivorous plants and one people associate with carnivorous plants. Kids are drawn to it as well, so I think the Venus flytrap is probably where a lot of folk get started. There's nectar in the traps, so the insects are drawn to feed on the nectar inside the traps. If the insect touches two of the trigger hairs in the centre, the plant will put the energy in to close it. And then the fly gets squished and digested. For them, it's not just random killing, it is survival, so they need to catch a certain amount of flies per year to supplement their diet, because in the soil or in the ground where they grow, it's very low in nutrients. There is only one Venus flytrap, but there are lots of different cultivars and different crosses and different mutations. So this particular Venus flytrap is a heterophylla, which means all green, and it's an erect form, so it's an upright. They do go dormant in the winter, so don't throw them away if the leaves go black. I've heard this story a lot of times from people that they assume that they're dead because the leaves go black and chuck them in the bin. I think there's a myth about these plants that they are delicate and tender. On our nursery, they have to deal with whatever the conditions are, indoors and outdoors. We grow thousands of them outside all year round, so snow, ice, rain, wind, we don't have any worries about temperatures or conditions with growing. Sunshine and rainwater is the key factor to keeping them alive. Do not let them dry.
And a few insects.
Yeah,
and
a few bugs to keep them going.
This is a Sarracenia. The plant needs flies to get pollinated, so it flowers first, and it flowers quite far away from the pitchers. And you can see these pitchers haven't even opened yet. So once it's been pollinated, then it's fair game. Then, you know, you're up for food. Sarracenias produce nectar along the rim here. Insects come to feed on it, and that nectar's also got a drug in it. So not only will the fly keep coming back, it gets a bit boozy, and in the end it just falls in. And the plant produces an enzyme at the bottom to dissolve the insect. It's not that gruesome. It's, you know, it's food. It's not murder, it's food. They're really easy to grow. Full sun, sit them in rainwater. They don't like hard water, and that's it. They're hardy plants. They can be outdoors, can be indoors. It's one of the plants that does great in a really hot conservatory, and in winter where it's unheated, so it's too cold for anybody, the plant will love it. Never let them dry out.
So I don't know if you can see inside there. I will actually cut inside the picture to show you what it has caught already this year. There's a wasp in there and blue bottles. Well, that is a bit gruesome.
People do say to us, they get these plants and then they sit in their conservatory rather than watching telly. People absolutely love them, don't they? This is a selection of sundews. They are also carnivorous plants. So the flies are attracted by nectar, which are these little baubles you can see here. They're really, really sticky, and that's like glue to a fly. So they stick to the plant, and then they get dissolved. I think it's a fun plant for children because it's easy to grow, and they can watch things being stuck to a plant. They're absolute sun lovers. Same as all the other carnivorous plants, sit them in rainwater, keep them wet, but full sun. My favourite is the filiformis. I call it the wine protector. If you put your wine glass next to it, then nothing falls in your wine. And don't forget, capensis, because it's good for mosquitoes. If the mosquito doesn't come to the plant, you take the plant to the mosquito and it sticks to it.
We're going to make a little pot of horrors. We grow them in this mix, which is a mixture of pine bark, perlite, and a handful of fine grit. So the first thing we do is we fill our 2-litre bowl. It's a plastic pot. Terracotta is not really suitable for these plants as it is porous, i.e. pulls the moisture out of the pot. So you make your hole with your spoon.
It brings a spoon. Why do you need a spoon?
You can see this one has decent roots on it already. Pop your Sarracenia in, firm it in. The next we're going to plant is the Venus flytrap. Try and tease it out. It won't have a huge root system on it, so I'm going to be as gentle as I can. Okay, there it goes. And the last hole is for the Drosera capensis for the sundew, which is this plant, a nice sticky one from South Africa. Try not to cover yourself in stickiness or cover the stickiness in soil. Put a good layer of grit on them, and that will make sure that the moisture stays in the pot. And there we have a little pot of horrors. Ta-da!
That's what he's good at. If I had to choose my favourite plant on the nursery, it's the cobra lily. They're really tough. They go down to -18, no problem. It's more of a shade lover as well, so it doesn't require full sunshine. Does still require the rainwater. On a really hot day, it likes to have cold roots, so it does brilliant as a pond marginal. And I love how it catches things. It produces nectar underneath the rim there. I don't know if you can see that, that's a hole. So flies go to feed there, and if I lift it up, you'll see it becomes lighter and lighter, so it looks to an insect like it can fly out of the top, and they bounce off and fall down. It's just a morbid fascination. I might need help. Come here.
Life without carnivorous plants would be pretty boring. Much duller, less colourful, and we would miss out on all this beauty.
And death.
And death.
One thing I can absolutely endorse is how tough Sarracenias are. At first, I used to grow them in the greenhouse, feeling I had to heat them. And then I left them out one year, and they dropped down to -8, and they were fine. This is Crown Prince. And of course, now is the perfect time to harvest pumpkins ready for Halloween. And the best thing to do is to put them somewhere sunny and warm so that the skins can harden. The harder the skin, the better they keep. And this is the biggie. This is a real Halloween one. This is Rouge des Temples. When you're cutting them, cut them with a sort of T shape on the top. It's tempting to cut them directly on the stalk, but actually it's better to cut them there and then another one like that. Let's take this out. There we go. you can see where the stem has gone around it, it's cut into it, and it hasn't fully coloured. But it's a beautiful object. To think you grow these, they're just sumptuous. And they taste fantastic, but I also know my grandchildren will love that if we can cut something really scary into it. That will go down a treat. Now, I grew them here in the greenhouse as an experiment. I wanted to see if the extra heat and protection will produce better and bigger fruits. And I think the answer has to be no, it hasn't. This is no better than I would expect from outside, and if anything, a bit worse. Probably because they didn't get quite enough water or not quite the same pollination, but I see no advantage in growing squashes and pumpkins indoors as a result of this year's trial. So I take this one off like that, and then like that. I will keep these in here for another week or two, just so they get the maximum sunlight they can, and then store them somewhere cool and dark, and that will keep them going well into the new year. Well, I can do no more. That's pumpkins done, and I'll sow my next batch probably next March. However, now is a good time to plant strawberries. It was a good year for strawberries. They were very nice. But the key thing about growing strawberries is to have a good succession of plants and to keep them moving. And ideally, you change your plants every 3 years. First-year plants tend not to crop very well at all. In the second and the third year, they really give you a good harvest. Thereafter, the harvest tends to fall off and viruses accumulate. Now, on this site here, I've just composted 4-year-old plants, and I will not put strawberries in there for at least another 3 years. That way you can be sure that they'll be virus-free. Now, at the other end of the bed, I'm going to plant another batch. What I've got here is honey eye, which is an earlier crop, and I've also got some marshmallow, which is a later one. For the next 12 months, these will not bear many fruit, and don't worry if it's none at all. What we do want to worry about is that these tiny little plants become nice and strong with a good root system. As for planting, make a hole, stick them in. Now, to get the best from strawberries, they need good drainage, but also rich soil. So this soil, which has got a lot of compost in it, or well-rotted manure would do the same, is ideal. It's tempting to plant them close together, but you could plant them 2 foot apart, and the wider apart they are, the stronger the plant, and therefore the more fruits you get. Now, any and every gardener understands that a good root system on a plant is the key to a healthy plant. And Nick Bailey has been to the University of Nottingham to find out more about the mysterious world of roots.
Walking around a garden or nursery, our focus is usually on flowers, foliage, and what to choose to create great borders.
We don't give much thought to the roots of these plants. Underground, busily working away, gathering water, nutrition, and stabilising the plant so it can produce all of that fabulousness on the soil surface. Historically, plant roots have been difficult to study deep underground, but thanks to modern technology, an amazing dark world is now coming to light.
The Hounsfield facility is a pioneering laboratory. Here, scientists are making extraordinary discoveries involving CT scanners designed to work on plants and their roots. Professor Craig Sturrock is the director.
Craig, hi. This is the most extraordinary setup. Never seen anything quite like it.
It's an amazing place to work, and we've got multiple scanners here of different scales to allow us to look at plant roots in the soil and really understand how they interact.
My understanding is that historically scientists have sort of based it around growing plants in water to directly observe the roots, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. The water system allows you to be able to easily see where the roots are, but this technique allows us to actually bring the soil back in, because the soil is so important for how that plant grows out in your garden and takes up nutrients and water.
To see the roots, Craig and the team put a growing plant into a CT scanner. And by taking a series of X-rays from different angles, they can see the roots as they grow over time. The results are astonishing of the roots and the soil around them.
So this allows us to basically see inside that pot of soil. We've got these cross sections, we can see the soil, all the different particles in there. There's a bit of a root here. But what's cool about the technique is we can actually pull things out in 3D. So you can see if I reveal where the roots are and just separate out from the soil.
Wow.
If we zoom in even further, you can actually see some of the veins on the developing first leaves that are coming out. So it's, I mean, the structure here is just kind of mind-boggling.
Incredible. Almost feels as though we're not really allowed to look at this stuff. It's a tucked away secret.
Well, they often say that the roots are the hidden half of the plant.
Yeah.
Using this technology, the team have made many discoveries. And Professor Malcolm Bennett, co-director of the lab, has huge admiration for the hidden half of plants, rather than just the flowers.
Malcolm, this new technology really is a revelation in terms of what it reveals is going on below ground.
Oh, it really opens up a whole new world. What we see, these plants have it easy. You know, when you look at there's constant light, there's constant temperature over much of the day, whereas the plant roots, oh my goodness, they have so many challenges in terms of how hard the soil is, the moisture levels, the nutrient availability, the pH, the texture. So there are many, many challenges a plant root faces, and that's the most remarkable thing. We've discovered amazing levels of adaptability of root systems, which are just astonishing.
Oh, it's extraordinary that all of this is kind of going on underground and we don't even get to see it.
Absolutely, it's a whole new world.
As we know from our gardens, plants thrive in different types of soil, depending on their origin. But lots like loamy soil, well drained with crumbly solids, air and water. Thanks to new technology, we can see what that looks like from a roots perspective.
What we've got here is an X-ray CT image of soil, and you can actually see it's color-coded with the gray for the soil particles, the blue for the water. Imagine you have a camera at the end of the root, and this is exactly what a root would see if it could, as it pushes through the soil, and you can see the water around the soil particles, you can see the air pockets, the spaces. It's incredibly complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's like the soil particles almost look like glazed donuts with the way the water's kind of wrapping around them.
Exactly, and it's those soil particles which contain the nutrients which the plant obviously requires. Water is essential to solubilize those nutrients, and the root uses hairs, for example, as they pass to capture those resources.
Every root is kind of literally an explorer working its way through and finding the stuff it needs.
Absolutely, it's the ultimate in foraging.
With water being so crucial to plants to access soil nutrients, the team have discovered that roots can recognize moisture and actively grow towards it.
When it comes to water, just how adaptable are plants' roots?
Oh, they're incredibly adaptable. Plants go to a lot of trouble to sense where water is available. And this picture I'm going to show you now just shows at the level they're willing to do that. You can see a root as it grows down. You can see it only forms roots on one side.
Because that's where the water was.
Exactly, so the water's available on one side and the other side is not available. And so roots are essentially shapeshifters. They change their shape to forage for that water.
Amazing.
It's a bit like a household budget. Why put your resources where they're not going to work? So essentially a plant is the same. It micromanages its resources.
The team has some amazing animations, including this one of a willow cutting. It takes 2 weeks for the first roots to appear and just 6 weeks to create a little network. But intriguingly, here at Norrell Nursery, there's a perfect opportunity to test out just how adaptable plant roots can be. Most of the borders are clay soil based, and as the Mediterranean plants were struggling, the owners created some sand-based beds. This potentilla naturally grows in a variety of soil types, and it's thriving in the free-draining sand.
So, what's going on here, Malcolm?
Well, as you can see, growing in sand, the roots have really got to work hard. You've got a mixture of thick roots, the main roots, and you've got fine roots as well. And they will really help explore the soil to acquire the water, the nutrients.
So I'm imagining some of these heavier roots that I've broken actually would have had far more fibrous roots attached to them further down.
Absolutely. So they're going to spread out and really have to forage hard to find the nutrients and the water, because sandy soils are so free draining and nutrient poor.
And having dug up another potentilla from a clay bed nearby, it's clear to see that root adaptability. Unlike the mass of hair-like sandy roots, the plant in soggy, nutritious clay only needs a few fat roots to get everything it needs. As a botanist, I've always known that plants are amazing, but getting this tiny glimpse of what's underground is astonishing.
It struck me today how hard many plants are working to adapt their root zones to the soils that they find themselves in. And this extraordinary phenomenon is a field we're only just beginning to understand.
Good boy. Come on. Come on. I was struck by just how extensive root systems can be and usually are, and most of us gardeners underestimate that. Talking of roots, have a look at these. The roots are growing out of the bottom of these plugs, even though they're very deep. This is Ami majus, and you might think that's a good sign. Strong plants, strong roots, but actually, it's more complicated than that. Ami majus is an annual, and the conventional wisdom is if you sow it in September, you get a small plant, you then overwinter it with some kind of protection, plant it out after the last frost in spring, and then it will flower in June for about 3, maybe 4 weeks. Lovely plant. You can sow it in spring, and it will grow, but it tends to be half the size. So there's a real advantage in sowing it early. And this year, I thought I'd be clever, and I sowed it in August, thinking I'd get a step ahead. But what happened was that it was still really hot in August and early September. So these young plants were being baked, and as a result, they've grown very well, but also they've started to flower. Now, this is an annual. It will only flower once. And the reason why it started to flower is because it's felt stressed. And it's thought, help, this is an emergency. I need to set seed because that's the purpose of the flowering. And there are a number of things that I can do about it. The first is to cut it right back, almost to the ground, and hope that next spring it throws up a new stem. The second thing to do is just keep it over winter, put it in a cold frame, and just hope enough of them will flower. The third thing I can do is plant it up and see what happens. By the way, I've got here Ami visnaga. Now, Ami visnaga is like an Ami majus, but it has a rounded umbel, flowers a little bit later and longer. This was sown in September, and it's perfect. This is exactly what you want from an early sowing in autumn. Healthy young plants, in plugs, not too big, easy to store over winter. I can put them on next March, grow them on, ready to plant out in May, and they will be really strong, good plants. So that's a lesson learned. Don't try and be clever. If it says sow in September, not August. Okay, I'm going to experiment. I've got 3 trays of these. One I'm going to keep, one I'm going to cut back, and one I'm going to plant out. And this is the one I'm going to plant out now. Now, of course, this is the writing garden, which is a white garden, but like all white gardens, it's really a green garden touched with white. And that is perfect for that. So I'm not going to plant it in sort of big groups. I want it to weave around the perennials that I've already got in here. Like most annuals, they will do best with at least half a day's sun. They do not like deep shade. I would stress that this is an experiment. They may not survive winter. And if they do survive winter, they may well be eaten by rabbits because in late winter, early spring, they seem to like ammi almost more than anything else. I'll continue to plant out this tray and spread it right through the writing garden. And between us, we'll see how they fare come next spring. But right now, we're going down to Cranbrook in Kent to visit the garden of Eleanor Cochrane and her husband. Because not only have they created a brand new modern house, but a brand new modern garden to go with it.
The garden to me is like a piece of art. The beauty of it is that it's an ongoing canvas. It's the distillation of all our natural impulses, is to create and grow something. I love all of the rich purples and pinks and blues, and especially at this time of year, in autumn, late summer light. That, for me, gives a really romantic feeling. When we first moved here, there was a bungalow here, very, very overgrown. You couldn't see the view. No garden as such at all. My husband and I built the house in 2015, and the brief was that it should be a lens in the landscape. So the landscape and the wider garden was the thing we were really interested in. I'm not formally trained, but I volunteered at Great Dixter for many years and learnt a huge amount. My husband's worst nightmare is me waking up and saying, I've had a really good idea. At the moment, this is my favourite part of the garden. Different times of the year, maybe a different part, but I just love the height and the romanticism of it. I try to make sure that I've got different form and different colour next to one another. So this is a Eupatorium capellifolium, and it really contrasts well with the Salvia indigo spires. So this is a Euonymus europaeus, great seed pods towards the end of the season, and once they pop, you get this tiny little orange fruit inside, which just glows in the sunshine. This pelargonium here is Pelargonium tomentosum. It has a wonderful velvety leaf and a wonderful minty scent. And if I've got a gap later on in the year, I'll put one in, and it'll just very gently bring a sense of softness and texture. The garden is split into areas, and in between each area of colourful planting is hopefully an area of rest. I think the restful areas are important because they create a rhythm, and it's quite nice to go around a corner and be surprised by something else. The north side of the garden is planted in white, green and white, a little bit of late pink just because of maturity on the hydrangeas and the sedum. And the other three sides of the garden are all colours, and the two do not mix and are not allowed to mix. And if a rogue gets in, it's whipped out. I'm very particular. This is a crucial part of this garden. This is my test bed area, and I try things out here. I might grow them on for a year or two, see how they're going to behave. So at the moment in here, I've got my new dahlias that I'm trying out. This one here is Spartacus. Once I've got to know them and know whether they'll fit into the main borders, then only then will they go in. You have to get past this section before you're allowed into the VIP area. These beds here are much wider. This is where there's an area of transparency, so from the rooms of the house, you've got the colour, but you still can see through to the view. This is Tagetes cinnabar. It's a marigold. It's tender, so you sow it probably about 6 weeks before the middle of June here. It's a wonderful pop of late colour, especially against the blue of the indigo spires. I always save the seed from the best plants. And so here's a seed pod. They're very easy to grow, they germinate really easily. In the garden you have reliable things. You know what they're going to do for you, but it's the little surprises that stop you in your tracks. I've never grown zinnias before, and this year I had a free packet of seed from the seed swap from our gardening club, and I thought I'm going to try. I've loved them. I'll grow them again, but I will be very selective about the colour, because some of them are yellow and they're not allowed in this garden.
Why not?
Because it would ruin the palette. The thing I love about gardening is I can never know everything, and every year there's something new to discover. I love the changes of the seasons. I like the rhythm of nature. I might, in the moment, not like the fact that something's failed, but it gives an opportunity to try something else, and that is what's exciting.
Eleanor's spot on. You know, failure might leave a bitter taste in the mouth, but you learn something from it. Success is wonderful, and we all need it to boost our egos, to enjoy our gardens. But you need plenty of failure, because that's the way that you learn. However, no failure this year whatsoever with the crab apples. It was wonderful blossom in spring. Fantastic fruit. I mean, have you ever seen more crab apples on a tree than these? This is Everest here in the Paradise Garden. We've got Comtesse de Paris in the cottage garden. All the crab apples are laden. In fact, for tree fruit, it has been extraordinary. If you look at the hawthorns, they're heavy with fruit. And of course, not only does that look great, it also means that it's brilliant for birds. Particularly the migrating birds coming in, they gobble up the hawthorn berries, and that gives them sustenance to see them through really cold periods. And of course, what you've got to remember, all these berries are not ornamental. They exist to produce seed, which exists to propagate new plants. This is all part of this cycle of plants reinventing themselves. And here are we gardening, taking cuttings, sowing seeds, making gardens, and yet they are blithely doing it perfectly well without any help from us. Now, enough celebration. Let's get down to some work. Here are some jobs you can do this weekend. If you grow vegetables, it's a good idea to sow some broad beans at this time of year to give you an early crop next spring. Beans germinate at low temperatures, so it doesn't matter if the soil is beginning to get cold. Sow them in double rows, and I find using a scaffolding board the best way to measure those rows, with the beans spaced about 6 inches apart. Push them into the soil, rake them over, and they should germinate in about 2 or 3 weeks. If you've taken cuttings this summer or autumn, like these sage ones, it's important to pot them on individually. Carefully take them out of the growing medium and separate the individual rooted cuttings and pot them in a free-draining compost and put them somewhere sheltered to protect them over winter. They'll then be ready to plant out next spring. It's not ideal to leave too much bare soil over the winter months, particularly in your vegetable garden. And green manure is a way both of protecting the soil by covering it and also providing nutrition and good soil structure for next spring. Ryegrass is your best bet at this time of year. Prepare the ground by weeding it, sow the seeds thinly, rake them in, and the ryegrass will germinate quickly and grow steadily over the winter months. The Jewel Garden is, and always has been, to be honest, the centre of Longmeadow. It's the physical centre. It takes up most of our work and time and attention. And in a funny way, given our history and story, it's a spiritual centre too. It has great meaning for Sarah and I. But one step to one side of the Jewel Garden, and there's a part that you hardly ever see. The other side of the Jewel Garden hedge is the copse. Now, I planted this 25, 30 years ago from nuts that then grew into little seedlings. The idea was to have a hazel coppice. And the other side of the path that runs through the middle of it is doing fine. But this side has never really functioned as well as the other side. The hazels don't grow as well. The underplanting, which was really one of the reasons I planted the copse with primroses and bluebells, has never really taken off. And the reason for that is mainly because the trees are taking up too much moisture and casting too much shade. So I have decided to make a big change. I'm going to cut down all the hazel, grub out the roots, and start again. Obviously, I'm going to keep the trees, but underneath the trees, it'll effectively be borders with narrow paths running through it. And the borders will be filled with plants from bulbs and perennials and even a few shrubs that thrive in the shade of the trees, real woodland planting. It's a big project, but it's very exciting. I'll start this autumn, carry on next year, but not today, because that's it. But I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next week. So until then, bye-bye.